Skywatch TV on the Bible Code. So this was Skywatch TV web, exclusive Richard show on Torah Codes and the Messiah arrival. So let us hear, very interesting and important, about the Torah Codes, Bible Codes. We saw other television also relate to it.
Why are so many hidden messages in the first 5 books of the Bible pointing to the very year in which you are watching this? This is Skywatch TV. I'm Derek Gilbert in studio with my best friend, my wife, and our science editor, Sharon K. Gilbert, and our guest, talking about a fascinating concept called the Torah Codes, producer of a film, The Torah Codes End to Darkness, the man behind Pinlight Films, Richard Shaw. Richard, welcome back.
Thank you very much. It's great to be back again.
This was a fascinating conversation last week, and we barely scratched the surface. And of course, you left us with a tease, which is good broadcast practice. Leave people wanting more. Well, tune in next week for more. But there seems to be in the Torah Codes these messages that point to 5776, the Jewish year, which is the very period of time in which we live right now.
Right, exactly. Right now, what's really hot is the gematria about the year 5776. And I know Tom Horn just wrote a book about why does this year come up.
Right.
Even in ancient texts, the Vilna Gaon mentions it. All of that. In fact, there's a prophecy that the Vilna Gaon made back in the 1700s that said, when Russian ships cross through the Bosphorus Strait, then the Messiah will come.
Yeah.
Now that's kind of what's happening on the Bosphorus Strait. Now this is really weird. When I was talking with Ellen Marzulli about this, because this was something that I was learning from my rabbi friends, that people don't really know where that is. I mean,
Right.
It's a strait that connects two bodies of water. The lower one is called the Sea of Marmara, and the strait goes right past the city of Istanbul.
Right.
So if you went into the Sea of Marmara and you went west just a few miles, you'd be at Camburgas. And Camburgas is where the most major UFO sighting of all time happened.
I did not know that.
I didn't know
If
that.
you ask any American, we'd say, well, Roswell.
Exactly.
No, this is where a UFO appeared 3 years in a row, and the last one, which was in Watchers 9, I did an analysis on it where you could actually see beings inside moving around, turning their heads, all of that kind of thing. Now that is just like a few miles from where the Russian ships are supposedly entering the Sea of Marmara, because that's where the craft was hanging over the Sea of Marmara. I mean, this is like, and I'm not kidding with this.
Yeah.
This is a real thing. When I first got involved with the rabbis, I was really afraid to even breach the topic of UFOs because it sounds like you're crazy or a conspiracy theorist or something like that. I knew they were real. There was just too much evidence.
Well, you're in good company here because we're all already labeled as members of a sci-fi apocalyptic prophetic cult. So
I have several
can't worry
versions
about
of my tinfoil hat.
That's right.
I can't worry about what people think of me. It's like, okay, I know this is real. I've had too much experience with it, so if you don't like it, don't listen to me.
Yeah.
But there's so much information about all of that, and I was afraid to even broach the topic with Rabbi Glaserson until he comes up on his own volition. We got to talking about the flood or something, and he was at my studio, and it's so much fun talking with him. It was really a lot of fun talking with Rabbi Glaserson. But he said we got to talk about the Tower of Babel, and he said, oh yes, it was a launching platform for space vehicles.
That's interesting.
Now all of a sudden, the idea of building a tower into heaven, it takes on a different concept.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, we've talked several times about how it actually was a gateway. So.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But see, Jews that are studying at that level, that are serious about what they're studying, expect all this stuff to happen before the Messiah occurs. I mean, this is like this old Capuan. It's like, oh yeah, well, UFOs are going to be around, and there's these beings are going to, appear as part of what's in their ancient Jewish mystical texts.
Well, it seems that there's almost a week doesn't go by that we don't hear another proclamation from Israel, from an Orthodox or ultra-Orthodox rabbi that the time of the Messiah is coming soon, that he's here imminently. The Vilna Gaon's prophecy, in fact, also included a reference to Russia taking the Crimea. which it did in the
Yeah.
the Crimean War, but
Very
it
much
also
so.
did again in March of 2014. So that's been fulfilled as well.
Yeah.
And of course, with Russia and Turkey fussing over their policies in Syria, Russia could wind up in Constantinople before we know it as well, Istanbul.
Nothing at this point would surprise me with the Saudis amassing 350,000 troops and all of that.
Right.
It's like, what's going on over there?
Yes.
You know, it's crazy. But some of these tables, which I'll give you here, according to ancient Jewish mystical texts as well, like the Zohar, the Midrash, they believe that at the time of the Messiah, there also is going to be this planet that appears. It says new stars will be seen, will be discovered during the time of Messiah. Now, just recently we had Caltech say that they've just discovered Planet 9. Now, they haven't seen it, but they can tell because of its perturbations of other planets. There's a very large body out there somewhere, at least 7 to 10 times the size of the Earth. Now, oddly enough, Gil Broussard calls his website Planet 7X.
Right.
Because he's believed that all along. And he's going with some really great information back in 1054, where in China, they saw this planet pass through. And evidently this planet comes a lot more frequently than anybody ever imagined. And yet the Earth isn't destroyed every time, because it depends on how far away it is when it passes. This time we aren't so sure what's going to happen.
Yeah.
It's like, so there's this table I have here. It says Nibiru, which is the
Nibiru, yeah.
sometimes the way it's referred to, 5776, a threat. And now those two lines of text are in parallel with each other, and also the word Purim is in there. Now that's like this month.
Oh,
Wow.
Okay? A lot of people are saying it's going to happen on the 26th of March, where we start seeing this thing. And typically in Scripture, when things go crazy, the parting of the Red Sea, all these things, it happened during that time of year, according to Gil Broussard, and I believe he's right. There's another one here. It says the threat of comet. Again, Nibiru, the stars of the host of the sky. That's in the plain text. And it says, lift up your eyes to the sky. Another thing in the plain text.
oh my goodness.
Stars of the sky. And then the date 5776 is in there. Now we don't know what that means. We're baffled by why 5776 keeps appearing in so many code tables. Here's another one. Threat. Star. Will be spoken. Everybody's talking about it. 5776. The time of the coming of Nibiru.
And this
That's
is
pretty specific.
It is, and by the time this program airs, we will be well into this period, so we may be able to confirm this by then. But in fact, Sharon and I talked on a recent Sci Friday program, which is on the Skywatch TV website and Roku channel, about the SETI, which is the Search for Extraterrestrial Intelligence program, searching for the parent body of a meteor shower that appeared over New Zealand unexpectedly on New Year's Eve. These meteor, unlike the Leonids and the Perseids, which appear every year at the same time and in the same part of the sky because of the orbit of the Earth, these had never appeared before. They weren't tracked on radar, so astronomers are concerned that maybe there's something new in the solar system that we don't know about yet, and they're looking to find out where these things came from, because there might be something else behind it.
Right.
Well, we also talked on that same show, I think, that we were discussing a new story about how Mars supposedly
Tilted
flipped
on its
20
axis, right.
degrees because they say a volcano. But I'm looking at this one that has Adar and the time of the coming of Nibiru. It also has Mars in there.
Yeah. I don't know why Glazerson put that. I have to ask him that.
Yeah.
Maybe he believes Mars will be affected. I mean, Mars was whacked on the backside really hard at some time in our past. And we have an asteroid belt out there because something got whacked.
And the Bible refers to Rahab.
Yeah.
Which some interpret as that being the name of the planet that formerly occupied the space between Mars and Jupiter.
And the planet Venus is postulated by Immanuel Velikovsky that it once was a comet and ended up as a planet in orbit. And that's why it still has such a high surface temperature. It's 800 degrees surface temperature.
Very warm. That's really intriguing.
Well, just as the coming of Messiah for Christians, of course, in the first century was heralded by a star, it appears that the Torah Codes are pointing to the emergence of another star and the Messiah's next appearance. We'll talk about that as Skywatch TV continues right after this. our kind domain? Did God put messages inside the first 5 books of the Bible that only now in the 21st century, late 20th, early 21st century, that we're able to decode? We're talking with filmmaker Richard Shaw in his film Torah Codes Into Darkness.
I want to ask a question that we actually were talking about before we started recording this program, and that's in the book of Revelation. John is told that there's an angel holding a little book in his hand, and he's told to eat it, and he says this will be sweet in your mouth, but it will be bitter in your belly, and then he's told to seal it up.
Mhm.
Is it possible that it's referring to this?
Well, the way you would seal something is to encrypt it.
Yes,
Especially if
yes.
people are already reading it. I really believe that firmly, that, you know, these kind of encryptions, the time of the end means that if this is the time of the end, if we are actually living in the time of the end, and a lot of people believe that we are, because there's just unexplainable things happening all over the world. We didn't have computers to the extent that we do today, and the comfort level of it, and the software written to do it. That's kind of like a way to unlock when these things are supposed to be known.
Uh-huh.
And it's taken years for people to even know that the Torah codes exist. And a lot of people poo-pooed it, said, oh, well, you can find codes in any text,
Sure.
you know, with a PowerPoint. And that's true, but like the propensity for those codes to be as clustered together and in such a small space with so few characters, or even using skips that the number of the skip itself is meaningful, like the secret number of God,
Mhm.
which we talk about in one of the videos on my website, which they can just watch for free.
And that's at intodarkness.com.
Intodarkness.com.
Okay.
That's
Yeah.
END,
Yes.
end to
Yeah,
darkness.
it's not into. It's not like the Star Trek
I was
movie.
going to say, exactly. Star Trek isn't coming after.
That's a
Yeah.
slightly larger budget.
Meaning that the way that phrase came up was that Laserson looked that up in the Torah Codes. It said "end to darkness," and that happened in the year 5736 when Professor Rips found out about the code.
That's what it
Interesting.
means,
That's what
an
it
end
means,
to the darkness.
Yeah.
That's wonderful.
Yeah, pretty cool.
I'm curious now, and I don't want to go too far afield from some of these fascinating clues that are coming out of the codes, but the rabbis that you come to know during the time of your relationship with them, how has their research into this phenomenon affected their faith?
Well, Professor Rips was kind of raised an atheist originally, and his story is in the film.
Yeah.
It's really powerful.
I found it really moving. Yeah.
I mean, he tried to protest the Soviet invasion of Czechoslovakia by setting himself on fire, and people rushed up and put him out, and he was immediately whisked off to a psychiatric prison. And so, when they let him out, he was transported to Israel. From what I understand, a bunch of mathematicians got together to save this guy because he was so brilliant. And they brought him there, and he saw this tremendous outpouring of Judaic, worship of God. He'd never seen anything like that before. And he realized that the big thing that they were all studying was the Torah. So he started reading it, and what really moved me when I interviewed him in the film is that I realized that the Torah was the book of miracles. And here he's a scientist. So he had to prove that the Torah was real. And the only way he could do this, and he told me, I didn't have money to go do archaeological digs. I couldn't, try to figure out if it's real that way. But I could do it through mathematics, because that's what he knew how to do.
Mm-hmm.
So when he got this information from Rabbi Yaniv, he went into it and got a couple other guys going to it, and that's how we have the Torah code that we have today.
What a story. His life story would make an amazing movie, don't you think?
Oh, it is. I mean, he's an amazing guy. I have the highest respect for Professor Rips.
It's amazing that he survived trying
Yes.
to set himself on
Clearly
fire.
the Lord
Yeah.
had plans for him.
Yeah.
These are gifted rabbis. I mean, Professor Rips is brilliant and humble, and you feel like you're in the presence of a great person when you're hanging out with him.
The emergence of a star, again, the birth of Jesus was heralded by a star.
Right.
And we see in Torah codes, we also see in prophecies included in some of the Jewish mystical texts, like the Zohar, the emergence of a star.
Right.
What does the Zohar say about it? What are they finding in the Torah codes about it? And is there a time frame assigned to these messages?
Well, yeah, I mean, it's Neiru, from the sky to earth, in the month Adar, which I believe is March, because it kind of bridges March and April.
That's what I was
The
thinking.
threat of a star, 5776, and that says comet. Now, what's interesting with this is that a lot of these tables have parallel words, but yet there is a lot of disagreement among the rabbis about whether this should be done or not. I mean, some of them, Rabbi Glazerson is a free thinker. He thinks way outside the box, and I'll say, I don't know, I'll mention something to him. Everybody's talking about Planet X, and I'm not sure what has encouraged that, but there's so much. I mean, if you go on Google and you look up Planet X, there's like millions of hits, okay?
Yeah.
And I told that to Glazerson, the next thing I know, he's on this quest to find Torah codes about Planet X. But then it also fits into the Jewish mystical text, so he feels like this is something he should be doing. But none of us expected him to come up with all of this. I mean, this is like more information. So we're just saying, why? What does this mean? Is there something important going to happen, or is it because everybody's talking about it that we're seeing this? That could also be the reason that people are interested in it, and so it comes up. Well, this year everybody's talking about it, and then we have these tables about Neiru. That may be all it's about. We don't know.
The idea that knowledge will increase and that things are being unsealed, that this is an end to darkness, indicating the prophetic fulfillment of the messages from the Torah. You talked before in our last program about some of the conversations you've had with Rabbi Glazerson about faith. He is a Jewish rabbi, and you are a Christian.
Right.
So we have a fundamental difference about who the Messiah is. That second power in heaven, Yahweh but not Yahweh.
Well, I'll ask myself, well, who do you think then is the Messiah?
That was a question. Who do they see as the Messiah?
Well, he thinks it's either Moses or Elijah, because that fits into their teachings more than anything else does. And of course, in the Old Testament, it talks about Elijah heralding the coming of the Messiah.
Right.
Now, in the Christian faith, it was like John the Baptist, but
Right.
some even refer John the Baptist as a form of Elijah. You know, and yet a lot of the scriptures in the Old Testament that refer to Yeshua are either misunderstood or ignored by the ultra-Orthodox community. Now, why that is, I don't quite understand. They always have a reason for why they believe that, and I'm not about to get in an argument with them about that, because I love them all, and that isn't helpful.
No.
But there are so many. To me, the reason I'm convinced it's Yeshua is because you open Psalm 22, and it says, my God, why hast thou forsaken me?"
Right.
You know, you open up Zechariah 12, and it says, they will look upon him on whom they pierced and weep, for him as a lost son. In Isaiah 53, he was wounded for our transgression, he was bruised for our iniquities. It's like we dumped all of our sins upon him, and by his stripes we were healed. If that's not what happened during the crucifixion, I don't know. And yet
Daniel, who nailed his arrival in Jerusalem to the year, and some say to the day.
Yeah.
So to me, all those things are meaningful. They're in the Tanakh. They're in the Old Testament. Even if I didn't believe the New Testament was true, I still have all of this in the Old Testament to look at and go, well, what about that? So I'm convinced through those passages that we know what we're talking about. Now, one thing that happened, which is just recently, which is very, very interesting, is that there was a kid that was 15 years old.
Yeah.
And his name was Nathan. And he died and was dead for 8 minutes, and he had an out-of-body experience. Now, I really take those seriously. Now, not all of them, some of them could have been dreams, some could have been hallucinations, but when someone has something this vivid and this detailed, I tend to consider it that the guy really had this happen to him. He said he went up to heaven, all his sins were there, and all of the good things he's done and bad things were weighed. It's very, very Judaic, and the way he described it was really, really sweet. He's sitting in a room full of rabbis telling the story in Hebrew, and this is all on the internet. It's gone viral. I mean, you can find this story that Nathan has about his near-death experience. But he was asked, well, so did you get any indication of when the Messiah would return? 20 years, 10 years, 1 year? And he said, imminent. It was imminent. He said, even at the door. And his mouth fell open. And then he said, and there's going to be a war. And he said it's going to happen. He said we're already at war now, but he said when the actual war starts, everyone will know it'll be boom, and the war has started. That's what he said. And he went into great detail about it. He said, and then the Messiah will reveal himself. He said the Messiah is already here and been here, but no one knows who he is. But he will reveal himself, and a lot of people, he said, will be surprised when they find out who he is. Now, all this is coming out of a 15-year-old kid who hasn't studied any of this stuff.
Well, the famous rabbi who passed away a few years ago,
Yes.
who left the name.
Rabbi Yitzhak
Yes.
Kaduri,
Yeah.
and left the name and said the name of the.
And I
Yeah.
asked the other rabbis
Yeshua,
about it. I said, so what about Rabbi Kaduri? Yeah, he was like 102 or something when he
Yeah.
passed away, and he was like one of the most venerable rabbis there.
Oh,
and
the
actually
streets.
healed people.
Yeah, the streets were choked with people for his
It looked
funeral
like
service.
a major funeral. Yeah.
Yeah.
They said, oh, it's not true. It's a hoax. It's, you know, they immediately disproved that could have been true. And then also, he didn't actually say Yeshua. It was like some other.
There was a little code.
Yeah, it was
Yeah.
it was encoded in the message. We took the first letter of the words or some such thing like
Yeah.
that. But yeah.
But interesting, Nathan, the kid who died, in a second video, which is a really goofy one, where they use chroma key and all sorts of stuff and crazy effects, and it kind of took away from the truth of his message, said that he saw 3 rabbis while he was in heaven, and one of them was Kaduri.
Oh my!
The fact that he mentioned that, I thought was insightful. Now, he never says anything about Yeshua.
Mm-hmm.
But in Watchers 9, we interviewed a guy who was a pastor in Iran, and he said that Jesus was appearing to people
Yes.
personally in Iran. Now, this was a guy way out in the sticks, and he got a knock on the door. He opens it up, and there's this man in glowing white raiment that walks in the house and said, I want you to write this down. And so he goes, okay. I mean, what would you do? So he writes it down, and he's being dictated the entire book of John.
Oh
And
my!
he fell asleep while he was writing it, and this man in white disappeared, and the next night he came back and let's continue. And he finished the book.
And it was in
dictated it to him.
Farsi or whatever language
Yeah.
they.
And we've been hearing stories like that from areas where it is dangerous for Christians, the Holy Spirit going to war. We have just about a half a minute left here, so we want to make you aware of how you can get a copy of End to Darkness, the book about, or the movie rather, about the Torah Codes, the deluxe package, including the DVD and the Blu-ray version. So you have one for yourself, one for a friend perhaps. $17.95 plus shipping and handling, and as a bonus, we'll add the audiobook version of Tom and Nita Horn's novel, The Ahriman Gate. Both of those for you, $17.95 from skywatchtvstore.com. We could go on for hours. This is fascinating. Richard Shaw, Pinlight Productions, the website endtodarkness.com. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Derek.
And thank you for watching as we keep watch. For Sharon Gilbert, I'm Derek Gilbert, and this is Skywatch TV. To celebrate the release of Nita Horn's inspiring new book, No Fences, Skywatch TV would like you to tell your story, because
And yet the Earth isn't destroyed every time, because it depends on how far away it is when it passes.
Mm-hmm.
This time we aren't so sure what's going to happen.
Yeah.
It's like, so there's this table I have here. It says Neiru, which is the
Nibiru, yeah.
sometimes the way it's referred to, 5776, a threat. And now those two lines of text are in parallel with each other, and also the word Purim is in there. Now that's like this month.
Oh.
Wow.
Okay? A lot of people are saying it's going to happen on the 26th of March, where we start seeing this thing. And typically in Scripture, when things go crazy, the parting of the Red Sea, all these things, it happened during that time of year, according to Gil Broussard, and I believe he's right. There's another one here. It says the threat of comet. Again, Nibiru, the stars of the host of the sky. That's in the plain text. And it says, lift up your eyes to the sky. Another thing in the plain text.
Oh my goodness.
Stars of the sky. And then the date 5776 is in there. Now, we don't know what that means. We're baffled by why 5776 keeps appearing in so many code tables. Here's another one. Threat. Star. Will be spoken. Everybody's talking about it. 5776. The time of the coming of Nibiru.
And this
That's
is
pretty specific.
It is, and by the time this program airs, we will be well into this period, so we may be able to confirm this by then. But in fact, Sharon and I talked on a recent Sci Friday program, which is on the Skywatch TV website and Roku channel.